Welcome to the One Mission TV series, Healing Conversations. I'm your host, Ashley Hasiotis. Chances are, if you found your way to this TV series, you're on a healing journey. And whether you went through something traumatic or you witnessed something traumatic, my hope is that the people that I interview during this TV series helps you as you continue on your healing journey. As always, One Mission and I am here for you. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Healing Conversations. I'm your host, Ashley Hasiotis. I'm so excited for our interview today because I have with me my friend Rob, who was at a very young age, knew that he was a healer. He could communicate with animals and he could communicate with other spirits, but he really shut that down. And I'm really excited to have him tell us why. But then through a life purpose event, a traumatic event, Rob realized that his life purpose was to heal people and to allow the divine to come through him and to heal others. I have actually witnessed Rob's healing myself. I have been working with Rob for a little over a year, and I cannot say enough about how meaningful his treatments are for me and what they have done for me and other friends of mine and people that I have met throughout the years while I've been going to see Rob. And the one thing that I can't wait to also talk about with Rob is that in the last 18 years, he has helped to heal over 200,000 people. So thank you, Rob, for coming today.
You're welcome. You're giving me chills. You're so sweet.
I'm so excited. This is going to be great. So to start, can you tell us a little bit about, I know that you were working on corporate America for a long time and you had this event. So if you would just tell us a little bit about, how that event changed your life and helped you to realize your life's purpose.
Okay, well, let me go back to where you kind of started with my childhood, because I think that's an important piece. Um, you know, my parents were super religious. They were German Lutherans. They literally carried the Bible with them 24 hours a day. We were taught to pray. We were taught about the Bible, which was all great. And so as a little boy, when I would go outside and see an animal that was hurt, and they always used to show up and right in front of me, to be in my path, I would simply just look up at the sky and say, God, would you please help this rabbit? And, that's what I was taught to do, right? Pray to God. And I would look at the rabbit would look at me, I'd reach down and touch the rabbit, and all this energy would come flying down through me, and the animal would flop around for a second, and then it'd be fine. And I'd just say, thank you, God, and get on with my day. It was no big deal, right? I thought everybody did that if you asked God. Mm-hmm. The challenge was that my parents, being so religious, were very threatened and frightened by me. They, for whatever reason, absolutely believed with certainty that I was possessed by the devil.
No.
You haven't heard this, huh?
No.
Oh, well, you're getting there. So, I'm 6, 7 years old, and I'm like, but Mom, I'm asking God to heal this rabbit. And if it was the devil, wouldn't the rabbit catch on fire and explode or something, but I'm asking God and the rabbit's getting better. So how's that bad? Well, the devil's tricking you. It's a trick. He's making you think you're somebody you're not, and then he's going to take over your body. So, I just, even at my young age, that didn't have any logic to it, right? It was what? So, but anyway, I was spanked and told not to do it anymore. But yet I would go outside and there'd be something in my path and I had to do it. And just, it's I'm asking God. So I found nothing wrong with it. But the problem was that I guess I went a little too far. So, and I had an older brother that enjoyed tattling on me, Rob's doing that thing again, and so they actually took me to the Lutheran church and did an exorcism on me because I thought I was possessed. Yeah, isn't that fun? Talk about years of therapy, right?
Wow.
So, and as a little boy, it scared the crap out of me, and obviously I stopped doing that thing, because I was frightened. And for years, I was in therapy for a long time because that was so traumatic. Plus, I had a lot of other not so kind things happen in my childhood. So, I was like, man, this is a mess. But later on when I started this work, I realized that what my parents did for me was a huge gift,
Mm.
because they could have called Ed Sullivan and put me on the Ed Sullivan show. I don't know if you're old enough for that,
No, I
Ashley.
get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or put me in a circus,
Yeah.
the amazing little boy, can heal stuff. And they didn't. They scared me. And the blessing was that by doing that, they allowed me to be normal. They allowed me to have a normal childhood as a human, teenager, growing up as a normal human being, which to me was a huge gift. Because I mean, it wasn't at the time, but as I look back at it now, it allowed me to have lots of human experiences, which I probably wouldn't have had I been taken to the TV show or something, right? And so, that was huge, because what my life has taught me, and I've had so many crazy things that happen in my life, that I got to have all kinds of experiences that were on the level of excessive. And so now what happens, and whoever comes to see me, whatever they have going on with them, is most likely something I've experienced myself.
Right.
Because I did drugs, I did alcohol, I tried to kill myself not once but twice. I had lots of medical problems. I mean, I think they put me through it, so
Yeah.
so I would have compassion and understanding. I mean, that's how I look at it. So my life was amazing, but it was also incredibly challenging, all the things that I went through. And again, you could come to me, Ashley, and say blah 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 blah, and I'm like, yeah, get it.
Yeah.
Instead of like, get over it, stop, stop suffering. I could have a big ego, but I don't, because I've been through it.
Yeah.
So fast forward, so I ended up as a little entrepreneur. I had like 3 businesses when I was 10 years old, and started working in the banks, and then I started working in corporate America, and I became a turnaround guy. So I would go in and actually heal companies, which I thought was kind of interesting, right? I was the company healer, but they called me a turnaround CEO. But it was the same thing. You had to heal the wounds of the company so it wouldn't die, right? And so I did that for years, and made a fortune. And then got married in mid 90s to somebody who had hired a private investigator to see who I was and how much money I had, and had a plan to take all the money, and they did. And so here I am at age 51, having had millions of dollars, all of a sudden having nothing. And again, I had to go through a little therapy about that, but
Yeah.
I realized that was a gift as well, because it took me out of being materialistic and power hungry and looking for the next Porsche, the next expensive watch or whatever, and took me down to zero. I mean, I was literally basically almost homeless and penniless. And, going from a multimillionaire to that in one day is a little hard to swallow when you're a 51-year-old man who thinks he's got the world under control, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
So again, all of this is good. I mean, I don't like people to go, oh, poor you. I'm like, no, this is amazing how this was all set up for me. So, so after that, and this was in 1999, um, I went through 3.5 years of, as you can imagine, abundant amount of alcohol and lots of painkillers,
Yep.
lots of them. And to the point where I would, and I'm not proud of any of this. I'm just saying that this has been my life experience, right? So, I mean, I got to the point where I would go see my doctor, and when he'd step out of the room, I'd reach in the little drawer and swipe a bunch of prescription
Mhm.
blanks. I was writing my own prescriptions.
Mhm.
One day the pharmacist looked at me and said, "This doesn't look right. I'm calling your doctor." And I, of course, bailed, and it stopped me. But what the point of the story is that I kept circling down into the swamp. And in February of 2003, I I couldn't deal anymore. And I'd been planning, and this was the second time I tried to kill myself in my early 30s, and that didn't work either. But I was going to do it on February 22nd. And I woke up that morning feeling very calm and excited. It's like, I get to get out of this mess,
Yeah.
and I took a bunch of pills and I went down to the beach because I lived in California, and um, started like going through all, the drug inducement of the pills. And all of a sudden, I found myself speaking to God. And, of course, my evil twin in here was like, "You're crazy. You took a lot of drugs. You've been taking a lot of drugs. You're making this stuff up, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
But, so there was an argument going on in my head, but the reality was I could see. And by the way, when they did the exorcism when I was 7, up until that point, I had full clairvoyance. I could see everything. I could feel everything. I could hear everything. I was like full on connected. And as soon as they did that, all that went away. Um, but here we are years later in 2003 when I'm supposedly going to, kick off. And all of a sudden, everything comes back. All my clairvoyance comes back, and all my knowing comes back, and everything comes back. And I'm sitting on the beach going, "What the hell's happening?" And I thought I was crazy, and I thought I was just in the process of dying and going through that mind thing where your mind starts making stuff up, or, whatever. But obviously I didn't die. And, God or whoever that is said to me, it's your choice. We wish for you to come back and do this work, but instead of just animals this time, work with humans. And at that point in my life, I didn't even remember that I did animals. I mean, it was so blanked out in my childhood that I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. And I don't know how to do that. And what are you, huh?" And I said, "Just do what you did as a child. Just ask God to help Ashley and put your hand on her, or, imagine you're putting your hand on her from a distance, and say thank you, and we'll take care of it for you. You're not going to do anything. We're doing everything. We're just using you as a vessel to get to other human beings." So you can imagine, I, thought I was nuts. And at the end of the conversation on the beach that day, they said, "We want you to go to Sedona, and you'll find out who you are." So here I am, this 3-year-old guy, 54-year-old guy who doesn't have any money, and his BMW is under surveillance to be repossessed. And, life wasn't very fun right then. But I managed to muster up enough willpower to drive from LA to Sedona. And that's when everything started to really unfold for me. And that's that's a week-long podcast, right? But that's when it started, was in February 2003. And people started just showing up at my house, and calling me, knocking on my door, asking to be healed. And I was like, "I don't know how to do this."
Yeah.
So there was a bit of a transition where I had to figure out that, I had to realize that it wasn't me, instead of trying to figure it out, because as a CEO of turning around companies, I needed to understand every little detail and figure it out. Right. And so my mind was always programmed to figure it out. And I can't figure this out because I'm getting in God's way. And so I have to really be absent from the process. I can observe, I can see what's going on. I'm fully aware of what the person's dealing with and how the beings are dealing with that person, but none of it is mine. I'm just the connector, and I used to ask this question, and somebody's probably asked this in front of you, Ashley, but like, what do they need you for? If you're really working with God, what do they need you for? And that's a good question, because I've asked it 100 times. And the answer simply is, the beings that I work with are of such a high frequency and a high vibration that if they came directly to you, it could be really harmful.
Yeah.
So they come through me, and my body somehow knows how to adjust the energy coming through me to the right frequency, the right vibration, to do the best it can for you. And and they use all of my clairvoyance and all of my senses to read your energy, read your organ systems, read everything going on with you. And they use that. I'm able to translate that, I guess, into a language that they understand. And so they can interface with you by coming through me, because I'm the translator. I'm the connector. I'm all of that, but I'm not doing anything. So,
Right.
but because I was a CEO and they first started doing this work, I said, wait a minute, we need to negotiate the terms of my employment here. Seriously.
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
bet you did. Yeah.
hey, if you want me to do this, there's some guidelines you're going to follow. I was like, are you kidding me? I'm telling God what to do. But I realized that was really important because we all need to do that. We all need to set guidelines with, otherwise, they're not us and they don't know us, even though they know about us. And so if we don't tell them what we want, they're going to just run over us. So anyway, I said, I don't want to go into a trance. I don't want to be absent. I want to be completely aware. I want you to answer all my questions. I want to understand what you're doing to the best that I can in my human brain. I will stay out of the way, but please keep me informed, which will keep me, interested.
Yes.
If I passed out every day and did this, I'd be bored. And if I didn't see anything or feel anything or know anything, I'd be bored. And now, 200,000 people later, I still get excited about the next person I'm going to work on because I know it's going to be fascinating. I'm like a little boy in a magic store that gets to play with the magic all day long. And, so I'm really lucky. I'm really grateful. And I'm not sure why they picked me. But I don't care because as long as I can do this work, I'm going to do it. And hopefully another 25 years, who knows?
Praise God.
There's
From
my,
your lips to his ears.
there's my story.
By the way, that's amazing, first of all. And that makes perfect sense to me now, because again, you're right. I'd never heard that before, but it makes sense to me that you have this presence about you that feels all knowing. And you're unlike a lot of other healers that I've been to. And I remember telling my friends that I wanted to come with me after my first session was, he's like a regular guy, like you walk in, you're like, what's up? How you doing? Hugging your people. And everybody was connected to you. And to be able to see it as a gift, and that's actually one of the questions, I'm sure this is going to come up again, to be able to see it as a gift is what makes you divine. And that's what makes us able to trust and believe in you.
Yeah, I am a normal guy, and I'm no different than anybody else. I have my own human struggles. I have my own emotional stuff. I have my own body function things. It's like, I'm not sitting on some cloud above going, get over it, you people. I'm in it with you guys. And yeah, it's a weird thing, Ashley, because when I'm working, it's like I have to get out of my physical body.
Mhm.
And, so it's like, if you would come to the Marriott at Newton where there's 350 people there or whatever, and I'm in the front, it looks like me, but I'm actually, Rob is like standing off to the side, watching this guy that looks like me do stuff.
Mhm.
It's very weird. But, I just know that, I love people and I love helping people. And, years ago, people used to say to me, you're too available. You should come in the back door and come, be announced and come up onto the stage and then have somebody whisk you away. But, you've seen it. I hang out with people as long as they're there. And that's just who I am. I have this beautiful gift and I want to share it with many people as I can. And I don't want people to think I'm a jerk because
Yep.
I'm not, I'm just the normal guy that somehow got picked to do something. It was funny when I first started doing this work, people would come to my place in Sedona or wherever I was, and they would look at me and go, where's Rob? I mean, you don't look, you must be his assistant or something because you don't have like dreadlocks or tattoos or gold chains with all the crosses on and stuff. This is me, and some people would leave because they didn't think I was real because I didn't have the right clothing on or the right tattoo or the right cross or whatever. I'm like, look, I
Interesting.
don't have I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not trying to get you to join my church. I'm just me. And this is who I am. And, that's how it is. So it's
That's
been an interesting journey.
yeah, I can only imagine it has for you. So the next question I have for you, and I know that you have worked with, because I've seen your posts. I've actually never been in a group session with a child before, but so I think my story is my firstborn child had cancer when he was an infant, and he had a very rare cancer. Well, first of all, it's rare to have a cancer as an infant, and the genetic makeup of his cancer was only seen in 55-year-old women, and they all died from it. So they gave Nicholas a 50-50 shot that he would make it 6 months. And I think this is for any suffering. And I think you probably will identify with this, but like when you're in the middle of a crisis, there is a part of you that looks up and is like, why is this happening? And I think when the struggles are with an adult, right? Like you're getting divorced and it's ugly, or you even have your own illness. Like that's how I found you to help me with my migraines. Maybe we rationalize that, and we can really understand and maybe buy into, like, there's a reason for it. I'm going to grow from this. There's an opportunity here. But it's really hard to apply that to a child, right? So I'm sure you get asked this question, but I would like to hear your answer. Like, why does it happen? Why do children get sick?
Well, I have a couple of answers for that. And, just because I have an answer doesn't mean it's the truth.
Mhm.
It's what I've observed in doing the work that I've done, seeing all these people and a lot of children.
Mhm.
I've always worked with children for free. I've always loved children because they're so open, they're so available. They don't really care. They're not hanging on to their dis-ease for some emotional reason or because they like the attention. They're just there.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound weird, Ashley, but I used to say to people, if I could only work on two kinds of beings, they would only be children and animals,
Hmm.
because animals are, I mean, don't, I hope nobody takes this wrong, but children are unconditional love
Mhm.
for us, and we feel unconditional love for them. Animals are unconditional love for us, and we feel unconditional love for them.
Mhm.
Animals take on our dis-ease all the time
Mhm.
because they're unconditional love. They're here to assist us. Children come here with a dis-ease to create a change in your life. It's like they're here for a very specific reason. And as painful as it may be, it's here to change something in the parent's life and the family life and the lineage life. So, for example, let's say with your son, um, or anybody's child, there's a long history of some kind of illness in the family that keeps getting passed down, passed down, passed down, passed down. And a child, in heaven or wherever that is, makes the decision that they're going to be the one that's going to create change in that family.
Mhm.
So they parachute down, and they show up with something that's going to be really challenging, but it's going to force the family to look at things in a much different way. And so, to me, children and animals, I mean, I'm not saying they're the same, but they're very similar in their energy and how they love, uh, are here to teach us something, or to give us a much bigger gift than what we can even see at the moment. And as hard as that is to understand, I think it's true.
Mhm.
Now, the thing with children that I've noticed is that, because there's so much desperation around children when they're sick,
Mhm.
that parents kind of go, I mean, and I would do the same thing, they go crazy looking for the answer, right?
Mhm.
And one of the biggest challenges I've seen is they usually have these long discussions with the doctor, whoever, right in front of their kid.
Mhm.
And it's like people don't understand that whether it's a 2-week old infant or a 3-year-old child or a 7-year-old child, they understand everything you're saying. And so, you know, it's like the child needs to understand that there is possibility and that we can give them possibility. And they've done their job by showing up and being diagnosed with something, which instills fear and panic and all that stuff in people. But now it's time to sit back and reap the rewards from that. But unfortunately, because of the, this is just my opinion, and people are going to get mad at me about this probably, but because we have so much fear and about our child, we're transmitting all that energy to the child, and all the discussion with the doctors in front of the child are transmitting all that energy to the child. So we're actually programming the child to do exactly what we don't want it to do,
Mhm.
which is a challenge, right?
Mhm.
Now, so I'll give you an example. On my website, there's a picture of a cute little boy that I met here in California a year and a half ago, maybe, and been fighting leukemia for 4 years. He was like 7 years old. You know, the majority of his life had been fighting this disease, and he didn't have any hair and he didn't have any weight, and he was barely able to walk. And his poor parents were really struggling, and his grandparents had relocated from Mexico to help the family. And there was all this stuff. And they brought him to see me. And luckily, it was in a group. So all these people got to witness this. I said to him, "What do you want? What do you want to do?" He's like, I think he wanted to be a spaceman or something. Really cute kid. He's like, "I just want to go out into space." I'm like, "Okay, let's think about that then." And I said, every time somebody asks you how you are, I want you to tell them I am healthy, I'm amazing, I'm grateful. And, you know, and it's hard because the parents are standing there going, "But we need to know how he is." And I'm like, "Yeah, he's healthy, he's amazing, he's grateful." Anyway, within 3 months, he was cancer free. And, it's because children understand at a much higher level than we do the simplicity of what's possible by just saying, "I'm healthy, I'm vital, I'm amazing," whatever. It changes it. The challenge for me is everybody, and again, I haven't had this experience, so I can't say how I would be, but everyone tends to go to the extreme with fear and anger and research and constantly looking at Google and constantly talking to people and constantly seeking other ways to heal things. And all of that is energy, and all of that energy is being programmed into the one that we're the most concerned about. So to me, the best thing we can do with a child that's sick is to give them love and peace, and encourage them to think about, their next birthday or their graduating from high school or something like that, and keep them out of the conversations that you're going to have, but don't involve them with it because they understand every word. If Ashley, I used to do past life regression work with people, so I'd hypnotize them and take them back into other places. And I was just stunned by I could take you back to when you're in utero, you're still inside your mom, and you could recall conversations your mom was having with your dad before you were even born,
Mhm.
and the emotions that were attached to that. And so it's not like kids don't understand. They understand from the moment of conception forward. And I think it's very important how we create an environment for children that are not well, because they're responding to our energy. They're responding to the feedback they're getting from the energy around them. And my experience has been, if you can change that energy around them, things can happen a lot quicker in a good way.
Mhm.
And yeah, some children are meant to not be here, and that's their gift to the family, even though it sounds so horrible to say that. But you know, if you look at if you're able to step back on emotionally and look at what happens to families that have child sickness in them, it changes their life, and it can in a good way.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, everybody gets sucked into the vortex and starts going down, and that's a challenge, right? Um, so I don't know if that helps, but
It does
um,
help. It's interesting for me to hear you say all that, because I actually believe that as well. When, right before we got the diagnosis, Nicholas was, because he was an infant, Ari was laying in the bed with him with Nicholas on his chest. And I was kind of pacing the hospital room. And um, Ari had his hands on Nicholas's back. And I put my hand on Ari's hand. And I said, "Nicholas is going to be okay." and we're going to get through this. It's going to make us stronger. And my husband was like, what? How do you know that? And what are you talking about? And I said, I know it because the same way that I knew that Nicholas was sick when nobody else did. And it was that belief that it was for a greater good and that he was going to get better, that carried me through the 188 days of him. I had to press the code button twice on Nicholas. And when I didn't lose that focus until we got home. My fear didn't set in until I got home. And now that I'm doing all this healing work, I realized that fear wasn't plugging into Nicholas's situation. That fear was plugging into past trauma. So my nervous system thinks, oh, well, okay, this is another bad thing that happened. So now we're going to prepare for the next bad thing that's going to happen. And that was always, when it was Nicholas, I always knew he was an old soul. He was sent here for so many great things. And every single person who meets him tells us that. And think about all the things that I've done with one mission, right? So for me, Nicholas has taught me so much, but has brought the world one mission. So I believe in that. And I think that, faith is a really tricky thing for people to be able to have faith in something that you can't touch and you can't see and you can't talk to. But it's there, it's there. You see it in children, you see it in infants. That's the miracle of life. And that miracle is God, is the universe, whatever you want to call it. And so I'm actually glad you answered the question like that, because it's good to hear somebody other than me and my cronies, to say the same thing that I believe. And then so that I think the interesting segue to that is, the healing that people like me do with you, right? In reference to Nicholas and their own journeys, is what role does the parent's healing play in the child's healing? Like you were saying, the child is really brought here for the greater good, right? They made that decision. I'm going to come in because I know all this good stuff is going to happen. I'm willing to make this sacrifice. But then there's this gift, right? So the parents have to accept it on some level. We have to accept our tragedies and our suffering as an opportunity to find better ground or whatever, right? How do parents do that maybe aren't like you and I, but maybe are listening to this and they're thinking to themselves like, that kind of resonates with me, but how do I just make the decision to believe that?
Well, here's the thing I say to people. What have you got to lose making a decision?
True.
What's your risk?
Mm-hmm.
The reward is huge. The risk is nothing, because you're going down this path. All you got to do is make a decision. What's your risk?
Mm-hmm.
The worst that can happen is your kid's going to get better.
Yeah.
I was like, hello, right? Yeah. So I put it to him that way. It's like, okay, let's do the odds game here. What do you got to lose?
Mm-hmm.
The way you're going now isn't pretty, and it's awful, and everybody's suffering, and it's taking everybody down. How about just trying something for a few days and seeing how that feels? And what do you got to lose? I'm not saying pull them out of the hospital, pull them away from doctors, bring them home and feed them lemonade and, M&Ms or whatever your magic trick is.
Yeah.
Just change the energy and see what happens, because why not? What do you got to lose?
Yeah.
And, that's really important. I mean, it's like, I'll give you another example that was always fascinating to me. I had a little 8-year-old boy come that was going blind in both eyes. Mm-hmm. And he'd been diagnosed, and I can't say the word, it's too big, but he had been diagnosed with a disease that was never found in children before and never found in both eyes before. Usually it was only in one eye, and it was usually in people over 50. And here's an 8-year-old kid got this disease in both eyes. And the doctor's treatment for this was to stick these long needles in and inject his eye with, let's torture him first
Oh,
but he's going to go blind anyway, but let's at least torture him first.
yeah.
And, a Methodist minister said to these parents, why don't you go see this guy? What do you got to lose? Why not look at another option and just see? Why not? I mean, what do you got to lose?
Right.
And the kid's name was James. And I said, James, what do you want to do when you grow up? And he's like, I want to be in the Air Force. I want to be a pilot. He said, but I can't be a pilot if I'm blind. I'm like, well, who says you have to be blind? How about you adopt the belief that your eyes are perfect and you're grateful? And so every time anybody asks you, how are your eyes today, James, you say, my eyes are perfect and I'm grateful. And I had his parents in a room and I'm like, you're going to be mad at me because if he does, and I said, I want to make a deal. Let's shake. I want you and I to have an agreement that anytime anybody asks you how your eyes are, you say, my eyes are perfect and I'm grateful. And, it drove his parents crazy and it drove the doctors crazy and everybody was crazy. And gee, what happened? Within a month, his eyes were perfect and he was grateful. And, did I do anything? Maybe the beings working with me, but the most important part was James adopted a new belief about his eyes and he bought into it. Because, with kids, you can go, let's shake on this and make a deal. And they'll do it a lot better than we will. We'll like, yeah, maybe I'll give it a shot. But kids are like, okay, I'm
Right.
in. Right. So my experiences have been with children that I treat them as adults and talk to them about the possibilities other than the one they've heard about and
Mhm.
just give them the option. Now, some will take it and some won't. But, my experience has been that when a child takes it, then the parents start to take it and all kinds of things happen.
Mhm. Yeah. That is interesting. And, I remember when we first started working together, one of the very first sessions, you said, get out of your own way. You think you came here for one reason. You think you're here for migraines. That's not why you're here for. The migraines are going to heal themselves, but that's not why you're here. Don't worry about why you're here. Just be happy and grateful that you're here and let the divine beings do their job. And I remember thinking to myself, but what about the migraines? But are we sure?
Excuse me. Yes. Excuse me.
I just want to make sure, did they get that memo? Because I want to make sure they got the memo. And I was really resisting even my own healing at the beginning of that because I was so adamant that I needed these migraines to go away in order for me to be happy, whole, healthy, and all of these things. And you and my friend next to me asked this question later at the very end of the session. She said, do we have to believe that this is going to happen, that this is going to work for us in order for it to work? And your answer was no, but you're here. So you must believe that it's going to happen on some level. And I think it's interesting that children, because they're so close to the divine. I mean, they're the most pure beings, right? Like animals. And so their natural inclination, because they don't have a lot of scars in their energy field and they don't have a lot of life experience that has tarnished them, they are more apt to believe. And you're right, it's the parents that really need this, what do they call it? The size of a mustard seed. They just need hope the size of a mustard seed to believe, right? So I think that's great that that you answered it the way that you did, because I think it's important for parents. They don't want to. They're afraid to believe, because what if it doesn't work?
Right. I mean, but that what if is what makes it not work,
Right.
and I've written a book that someday I'm going to finish, but the title to me is very telling. The title is simply this: illness is the cure.
Mhm.
Because what I know is that the soul, whether it's a child or an adult, says, okay, Ashley, you're just not getting this. We're going to bring forth everything in your body and your past lives and your lineage, all your family stuff, all your stuff, and we're going to put it in a way that you cannot ignore it any longer.
Mhm.
We're going to give you the old cosmic 2x4, right? And we're going to get your attention in a way that we're going to really get your attention. So guess what? You have cancer.
Yeah.
Now, to me, that diagnosis is your opportunity to cure everything.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean you're supposed to die from it. It means it's an opportunity to cure everything.
Yeah.
So I look at all these things as horrifying as they might be to a parent or a, whatever it is, whether it's a spouse or a parent or a kid or whoever it is, even your dog. I
Mhm.
mean, it's an opportunity to change something and change your diet, change your thought, change everything, or believe in what somebody told you.
Mhm.
See, the other thing that I just want to point out, and people can write me about this too, is one of my last jobs before I started doing this work was I ran big healthcare organizations.
Mm.
But you didn't know that, did you?
Oh, I did not.
Oh, so here I am, the CEO in a corner office having to make decisions. And, I learned, and I'm not a doctor. I'm not supposed to be a doctor, but we, primarily employed physicians to run these HMOs and stuff. And we used to have legal risk training with our providers because it's better to always give you the worst case scenario than it is to give you a possibility.
Mhm.
Because if I don't give you the worst case scenario and the worst case scenario occurs, I'm going to get sued. If I give you the worst case scenario and you have a miraculous healing, I'm your hero. But
Mhm.
in either way, I'm more protected legally and from liability.
Mhm.
So doctors are trained to give you the worst possible scenario.
Mhm.
That only means that's what it's the worst case scenario. And how about everything before that, right? Why not? And we are the only ones that can control our bodies. Nobody else can unless we buy into somebody else's opinion.
Right.
So just I always say, okay, so that's the worst case scenario, but let's work on the best case scenario. How about if you're going to use all that energy, we can use it in a different way and see what happens.
Yeah. A lot of the families that I see with through One Mission, their child getting sick isn't their first trauma, right? And they don't even realize that until we start to talk.
Right.
And I'm like, so tell me a little bit about your childhood. And they tell me these stories. And I'm like, right. So you get how this fear that you're feeling right now, because your child is critically ill, it's really re-triggering old stuff. And if they can heal this old stuff, maybe they could be more present and ready for the miracle for their child and ready for their own miracles, you know?
Yeah, people don't understand how much of our own emotional state we pass forward. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, Something I learned years ago was that um, people that have anorexia or whatever those eating disorders are, and then have suicidal tendencies and cutting and all that kind of stuff, really huge self-worth things, you can actually almost always trace back to the moment of conception.
Mm. How so?
Well, so you're making love with somebody and all of a sudden you have the feeling that somebody you may have just gotten pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thought that comes to you, not always, but the guy could say, I hope you're not pregnant because I'm not taking care of that baby. You better get an abortion.
Yeah.
Or the woman thinks, I don't have any money. I can't afford a baby. I better get an abortion. Remember that the baby is already hearing that conversation.
Right.
So the first energetic imprint on the child is you don't deserve to live
Right.
because even your parents don't want you.
Right.
Okay. So that's kind of an extreme case, but I've worked with tons of people who the woman, you know the mom used to say to them, now mom, I had a horrible pregnancy, it was awful, I was sick, baby almost died. And so the whole pregnancy the woman is like freaking out about, I hope I don't get sick, I hope the baby doesn't die, I hope it's not malformed, all this fear, all this fear, all this fear, and all of that stuff is getting injected into the baby. And so the baby comes out, kind of an emotional mess because we've programmed them to be that way during the pregnancy.
Interesting.
And so the good thing is that, you can clear a baby in like 5 seconds. It takes a little bit longer to clear an adult because we're so, embedded with our own stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, I mean, so sometimes the child has to have to be such an exaggeration of the opposite of health to get everybody's attention. So like you said, mom and dad need to look at their drinking or their anxiety or their diet or their thinking or all of that stuff, because in doing all of that, they've created this child who's now holding it in their face going, excuse me, you're really messing this up.
Yeah.
And the child is taken on the responsibility of healing the parents, which is really what a lot of this is about. And we just need to look at it differently and treat the child differently and treat ourselves differently. And even though it can be scary as hell, but again, what do you got to lose? If you're really afraid you're going to lose your kid and you adopt a new thing, what do you got to lose?
Right. Yeah.
Nothing, right?
Nothing.
So
Yeah. You could be in worst case scenario, right back where you started.
nothing changed.
Mhm.
But if you believe nothing is going to change, you're going to get exactly that. So if you try a different belief, maybe you get something different.
Mhm. Does your healing help us to repave pathways in our brains for this, old patterns of thinking that,
Mhm,
we're kind of stuck into?
mhm. So the example I like to use because people understand it is think of your human body as Google,
Mhm.
right? So in your body is stored every experience you've ever had in every lifetime, categorized in a very specific way. And it's also storing all the stuff from seven generations going back in your lineage in a very specific way. So your brain is like the keypad on your computer. So, um, you see a warm apple pie in the bakery. Let's just make it easy.
Yeah.
Brain Google's warm apple pie in bakery, pushes enter, and it goes down into your Google and brings forward every experience you've ever had with apples, pie, warm, just like Google does.
Yeah.
And it brings it up into the files that are most commonly accessed and the most powerful, right? Same way. So you have a reaction to an apple pie that's like, what the hell am I having that reaction for? It's just an apple pie, but it's bringing all this stuff forward. It could be a person, a place, a thing, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But unlike Google, what happens is that your brain opens the file up, the top two or three files, and you have this enormous reaction to warm apple pie. Or it could be a kitten, it could be a puppy, the most cute thing in the world, and you see a puppy and you freak out. And you're like, what am I freaking out for? So what we're doing in this work is that we're going into your Google files and removing the files that are creating the most disruption in your body from emotional reactions.
Mhm.
So people often say to me, I came to see this work, and I think God's interesting because God will often throw something in front of you that will make you realize that you're different. So, you've always had this relationship with John, let's say, Ashley, and every time you think of John, John, you're like, you get anxiety or whatever, and you walk out of the Marriott, and who do you run into in the lobby but John, right?
Right.
Seriously, it happens all the time. Or it could be a phone call, or it could be something on TV, or all of a sudden, and people can feel their brain trying to reconnect with that Google file, but the Google file's gone because we took it out. And so all of a sudden you get to react to John, and in the moment, pure John, not everything in the past that had nothing to do with them anyway.
Right.
So that's a lot of this work is pulling all this clutter out of your body. So when your brain Googles something, it's getting the Wikipedia like version, not all the baloney stuff, right? So does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You're basically healing, you're healing the old trauma so that it can be what it is.
I mean, the brain is a historian. It's not in the moment, it's a historian. So every time you go to your brain, it goes to the most recent example of that experience, and it usually brings the negative stuff up first. So you have this reaction, has nothing to do with it, but it's so overwhelming that you buy into it. And like the Buddhists tell you to I love this Buddhist teaching where they say, you wake up in the morning and your throat's a little scratchy, and you immediately Google scratchy throat in your mind, and you remember the last time you had a scratchy throat, and it turned into a cold and a fever, and you had to call in sick from work, and then your kids got sick, and your husband got sick, and everybody got sick, and your whole life's over, right? The Buddhists would say to you, change the past and change the future. So if you wake up in the morning and your throat's scratchy and your brain starts going the other way, you create a different past by saying, my throat's scratchy because the air's dry and I'm just going to drink some juice and I'm fine. You don't go into that story, because as soon as you go into the story, you recreate it, and it happens exactly that way. So
Yes.
you change the reaction to the scratchy throat into a future that you want. And then the next time you have a scratchy throat, theoretically, that future gets created because it's not the same one that's been created in the past.
Yes.
But does that make sense? It's like it's brilliant.
It is.
And I'm like, oh, because we keep doing that. We keep replaying the same crap over and over and over and over again, and wonder why we keep having the same crap over and over and over again. The other thing I say to people a lot, that people like, but this doesn't work. And I like to say to people, how many of you believe in the parking angel?
Yep.
Right? How many? And you get a lot of people grace, yeah, I can create that perfect parking place.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, so why does that work for you? Because you believe that when you say it, it works.
Mhm.
It's no different creating health in your child, health in you, health in anything else. If you believe that you can create a parking place, why not believe that your child's healthy? It's
Yep.
the same thing.
Mhm.
And the difference is, you don't believe one of them, you believe, and one of them you don't. And one of them works all the time and the other one you're afraid to use.
Mhm.
So how about just, transfer that same energy into your life?
Mhm.
You can create a parking place, you can create anything. And look at your life. You've been creating the same crap in your life over and over and over. So that works. So all this stuff works. You can prove that it works. How about something that you like that's fun, like a parking angel? So how about creating a perfect body, a perfect, you know, health, perfect wealth, perfect whatever instead? It's the same thing.
Now, is it important to know why, like, because yes, we believe in parking angels because we believe in it. It's not that we don't believe in our own health, it's that we're afraid to either have it or to not have it,
Right.
right? So is it necessary to understand where that fear comes from in order to resolve it so that we can believe in it?
No, because people think they need to, this is my opinion. If
Yeah.
people think they need to understand fear, they spend too much time thinking about the understanding, and all that's doing is recreating the fear.
Okay.
So, right. So, I mean, the example I use in Newton all the time is, people always say to me, why am I afraid of the dark, right? Let's just use that example. Why am I afraid of a beautiful fire in a fireplace? Well, if I told you that you're afraid of the dark because a hood was put over your head just before they lit the fire under your feet, that when you were burned to death as a witch in Salem, if I told you that, a natural human being would be on Google looking at everything about Salem witch burning and looking to see if they could see a picture of somebody that looked like them.
Yep.
And in doing so, they'd bring all that energy back in their body. So not knowing what it is easier to let go of than knowing what it is and continually thinking about it, talking about it, telling your friends about it, Googling it, all that stuff. So no, you don't need to know. You just need to decide that you're done.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense.
I mean, keep it simple. We make everything so complicated. We overthink everything. We try to figure everything out. And it's not that way. It's like, we're here to have experiences, and once we have the experience, we have the ability to move on to the next experience. But somehow we figured out that we need to keep having the same experience and suffer, suffer, suffer. Some of the religious people say, you're here to suffer. I'm like, no, you're not. You're here to have a good time. Have your experiences, check the box, have another experience, check the box, have another experience, check the box, and see how many menu items you can check off your menu of this life, and get to the end of it, instead of getting stuck on some vinegar that got spilled in your milk. It's like, just move to the next one.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, last question, because I know we're coming up on time. So for me, my experience with working with you is what I did was I did 4 basically back to back, so once a month sessions. And then I took some time, a couple months, to like integrate all of that. And I listened to some calls over that summer. And then I came back and did some more in-person work. How does somebody, like decide how long it's going to take? Like, what's the average length of time that somebody works with you before they either start to feel better or start to see changes in their lives? And how does that work?
That's always a question. I mean, that question gets asked all the time. And it's a tricky question. Okay. Because everybody's different, and it depends on so many factors, but, it takes more than you think. But for example, again, with migraine is the outcome of something else that's not working in your life.
Mhm.
And so everybody focuses on the neck or the head, or where's or why you have optic nerve problems, or what's I used to have migraines all the time, so I'm the migraine king. I used to have them 2 3 times a week, trying to do a board meeting and a big investment meeting, and I got my brain feels like it's on fire, right? So the migraine is the outcome, not the source. So sometimes people take longer to heal their outcome because there's so much underneath that's creating it, that it takes, everybody thinks, how come I still have migraines? Well, because we're still mining out the crap that's creating the migraines. And if your migraine went away, you'd stop mining out the crap and you wouldn't get what you really needed to get.
Right.
Right. So everybody's different. There's people that have amazing miracle like in a second, and people are like, huh? How come that guy got it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that we're all unique. We all have very different emotional patterns, energetic patterns, health problems, mental problems, and all that stuff is different. And it depends on how much you're willing to let go, because a lot of people are not willing to let go of their stuff.
Mhm.
And so all those factors together say, that's why, obviously you need at least 4 to 6 sessions initially, as close together as you can. That will create a massive change in your life. It may not create the thing that you came for, because there's still more to do around that. But people come and like, fix my migraines, fix my shoulder, fix my Crohn's, fix this, fix that. Well, that's the outcome that took lifetimes to develop. It's not as easy as you think. And I'm not saying this because I want people to like pay me lots of money and stay with me for years. I'm just saying the truth, which is everybody's different. But the more you just let go and get out of the way and stop focusing on what you think is wrong with you, and allow yourself to let go of what's causing what you think is wrong with you, then it'll be a lot quicker.
Yeah.
But there's free calls on my website. You can get angel cards for free. You can listen to playlists on the website. All these things are encoded with energy. So just doing that doesn't cost you any money, and it keeps your body reminded of the beauty of this work.
Mhm. That playlist, by the way, as soon as it starts, I'm like, oh, I feel like I've come.
Here we go. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate that. Was amazing, chock full of amazing information, and even stuff that I didn't know we were going to talk about, we talked about, and I know it will really help everybody that listens. So thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody. So we'll see you soon. Stay tuned for the next video.